This morning's scripture reading will be from the book of Isaiah, chapter 6, verses 1 through 8. Book of Isaiah, chapter 6, verses 1 through 8, and I'll be reading out of the New King James Version. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord sitting on a throne, high and lifted up, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Above it stood seraphim. Each one had 6 wings. With 2 he covered his face, with 2 he covered his feet, and with 2 he flew. And one cried to another and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. And the posts of the door were shaken by the voice of him who cried out, and the house was filled with smoke. So I said, Woe is me, for I am undone, because I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips. For my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. Then one of the seraphim flew to me, having in his hand a live coal, which he had taken with the tongs from the altar, and he touched my mouth with it, and said, Behold, this has touched your lips. Your iniquity is taken away, and your sin is purged. Also I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send? And who will go for us? Then I said, Here am I, send me.
I think anyone who has worked for the school any time, any length of time at all, will tell you what the joy is when you get to introduce one of your graduates, and especially to tell you something of his story and something of the work that God is able to do through him. I'm pleased and blessed this morning to introduce one of the students from the Singapore school, Tran. He goes by On for those who are his good friends. An and his wife Huang came to the school. They graduated in 2015. They came to the school never really having been in that culture of the West that you can find in Singapore. They came very enculturated in Vietnam culture, and so when they came to the school, it was an interesting time. And one of the joys that I have in thinking back about Hong An and Huang as they were at school was the transformation that took place from the day one till the time that they graduated. Hong An will tell you some of his story. He's a third generation preacher in part of Vietnam that is definitely in need of the gospel. His grandfather was there during the war. He stuck around during that time, and during that time was still evangelizing in spite of all that was going on around him. Hong An grew up on the road with his father, who traveled several hundred kilometers every week in order to make sure that the gospel was spread from one church and one group of people to another. He grew up at his father's heels and walked that circuit with his dad. And because of that upbringing, Hong An is determined to continue that process as he looks towards the future. In fact, he named his daughter, little Grace, who's not with us this morning. And her Vietnamese name means beautiful message. And he's blessed her with that name because of his desire to make sure that the message continues to be spread. So I pray that you will welcome him as we always do. And let me bring to the front Hong An Tran.
Thank you, Bro Brandy. And thank you so much for this opportunity to speak to you and bring the good news from Vietnam to you. I owe you this school in many ways from the Lord, because you see that how the Lord is doing in Vietnam, and sure that you are a part of it. And so this morning I would like to tell you about the Lord and His Word in Vietnam through history, and so that you can have more reason to praise Him, to glorify Him, and I also want to encourage you to be faithful to Him and continue to serve Him through this message. So, in the history of the church in Vietnam, of course, there's no part in the north. You may know the reason why. Um, so, this history is all about the south of Vietnam. That's how the church began and then grew up and all kinds of things. So, there will be three periods of time in this history. And the first one that will be the South, the South from 1960 to 1975. Now, to the brethren in this country that they send missionary to Vietnam to evangelize, to do the work, no one can recall the fact that when the work took place. So there is an academic paper that documented from denomination, but in actually the work began at 1959. But for the churches of Christ in this country, they may know the work took place in about 1960 or 1963. We cannot know for sure, but let's go with 1960. So um, the work began with the soldier, American soldier, when they came to fight in Vietnam. And whether that is a good or bad is not the point here. The point is the good thing for the kingdom of God that spread in Vietnam. So the soldier came and they evangelized. And after that, the missionary came. So um, within the 15 years from 1960 to 1965. So they established more than 6 churches of Christ that are called to my father memory. And most likely that the church established around surround the Saigon city, which is Ho Chi Minh City right now, just surrounding area that more than 6 churches. And most of the members that they got is from denomination. Yeah, most of them. So the number is from the document that done by the government, but our country is not good with keeping the record. So I try to go back and find that document, but it's not there. But in the past, I have read that document, so it's said that about 500 people, the members of the Church of Christ, in that period of time. And so during this time, uh, the church have a freedom in worship. They can do whatever that they would like to do. They have many project program outreach. They build a school, elementary and high school. They have a Bible class. They have a free English class for the people to come. And during that time, people were wrong to that kind of thing because they would like to learn English to communicate and whatsoever. So they use that kind of thing to outreach, to do the work. And many denominations came for that class, English class and free Bible class. So that's how they cover they cover people. And during this time, we also have eldership, deacon, and well-established churches. So the missionary and the churches in the U.S. also help to send some of the leaders to uh, oversee, like Philippines, to be trained during that time. So we have very good number, well trained. One of the things is sad about them is when later you see that when the fall came and then they go to this country, none of them go back with that ability to serve and all kinds of things. And if someone go back, they go back with a false doctrine. That you see that point later. So you can see that this time is just freedom in everything. They can do everything and also fully supported by the churches from this country and other country. Now, the fear of the communists and the fall of Saigon came. So they sensed that fear, and everyone in the south they they don't like it. So they try to leave. They try to abandon the country and go somewhere else. And of course, they may go to this country. And and that happened to the church member as well. So people outside the church they move. So the church member also would like to do that. And then the church leaders also did the same thing. They abandoned the country also, and they just moved because of the fear of the communists, the new government. So most of the church leaders were gone. Just two were uh, left or remained there to take care of the church. And then the last thing that the rumor of the fall came near in April 1975. So the church was announced that there were two helicopters that were sent to rescue the church. So the members knew about that news, and then my step grandfather and plus with other people announced that news to the people. So the church member gathered together, and they were ready to move to just leave the country. But the fall of Saigon came sooner than they expected. So in April 30, 1975, so they may think maybe something in the early of May or in the mid of May, but it came very early during that time. So the two helicopters were sent, and then they were in the middle of the way from Hong Kong to Saigon, and they received the news that the Saigon already defeated. So you see that the church member and some of the leaders, including my step grandfather, they had no choice, so they have to stay back. So um, that's a we to us we feel grateful for the thought of the churches of Christ in the U.S. that they send two helicopters to rescue the church, and we understand that and we love that. But God have a different plan to rescue the church in different way, and so after the fall of Saigon, during this time that the church faced the severe persecution after the fall. Now, this happened to any one denomination or the church of Christ, same thing. So I already mentioned that the church have facility and many programs like orphanage, school, all kinds. Now, these facility and building that was seized by the government. I mean, they took over the building and all kinds. Even the church building, our church building, in Saigon, in Ho Chi Minh City. So so the some of the members that during this time um, to the local people they are considered as a Christian because of the Christianity. They thought that whoever that related to Christianity will be considered as a Christian, someone that is not faithful to the country. And also many people that were put to jail to be brand washed. Yeah, that's the thing that they do. And so because of the severe persecution, so this time no more freedom. So suddenly changed from freedom to no more freedom. So these people that their faith were put in test, and not many were faithful to the Lord. Now, some of the people that they went back to their former denomination, whatever uh, that is. So they went back to that, and some of them that they just renounced their faith because they don't want to do what they don't have anything to do with Christianity anymore because of the severe persecution from the government and from the people. Because in that, I mean, in our culture, we would not welcome such a thing because they worship an ancestor and all kinds of things. So some of them renounced the faith, and other that they just wonder they would not go back to denomination, but they associate themselves with them in such a way that they let the false doctrine that somehow influence them. Of course, they may said that I'm still the members of the church, but when we talk to them, their doctrine is, is not right anymore. So the story is not end here, because if the story ends here, you will see that the fall of Saigon is look like or seem to be the fall of the church. But the story does not end here. So we go to the second period of time that from 1975 to 1984, and this is the establishment of the Dầu Tiếng Church. This is my hometown, Dầu Tiếng Bình Dương, of Vietnam. So this is my hometown, and this began with my step grandfather ministry. Of course, he was serving in Saigon before that, but because of the fall of Saigon, so there were two families moved from Saigon to my hometown right now. So these two families with about 10 people and including my step grandfather. So they moved to the new town, the new place, and the new people. But the church member is the same. So just a new location, but the people is the same. The minister is the same. So my step grandfather continues to serve them in a new location. Now, when they first came to that town, they immediately, um, of course, they tried to move from Ho Chi Minh City, but still get persecution. So the local government that forced them to worship separately. So two family they can worship by themselves. One family in this place, and then another family in this place. They cannot join together for worship, and this is persecution also effective with the my home church as well. So during about for 10 years, so they face persecution, they face famine about 10 years, so they don't have enough food to eat, and then no more overseas support, no more connection with the outside. They have to stand on their feet during that time. So my step grandfather, his name is Yu, and so he's the first generation of the church, and his faith was at least as a light to the church during that time. So my father looked to him to see his example, his faith, and during this time that many people that acting corruptly in the sense that they try to see the church property, all kinds of things. But my step grandfather, he was faithful um, to his last breath, and so because of that, so my father learned from his faith, and I am too. So this man is very important for the work in Vietnam. And April 14, 1984, he went back to the Lord. So that end of his ministry. Now I mentioned that there were two families. So the other family that led by an old man, and this is the oldest man in the church. Now he went back to the Lord already, but you can see that we still have the first generation with us, um, at least up to 2014 or 15. So now the two family they continue to worship God and continue to evangelize, and so the church, yeah, can survive during that time. So the next point will be from 1984 to the present. So this began with my father ministry. So um, this is my family, and that's my father. So he continued his stepfather ministry when he was 23 years old, and the Lord has baptized uh, about 500 people through my father and established many churches of Christ in the South. And so his faith legacy is seen in the third generation, like me and the other young men that my fellow uh, worker in the Lord right now, in the field right now. And so both of us were trained under my father, and of course I also was trained in SIBI. So during this time, that how many churches was established from 1984 to 2015. That's my father ministry, and you can see here. This is oops, sorry. This is my hometown. Yeah, and this is the surrounding. This is Ho Chi Minh City. So my hometown outside of Ho Chi Minh City. But this is surrounding the churches of Christ that were established during this time. So 2013 I went to Sunset, and then 15 I just finished the school over there. And during this time I was blessed to have a mentor like Brother Brandy, Brother Edward, and other people that in my life that God used them to change and transform my life. And then in I began my ministry 2015, 2017, because 2017 I also came to this country to study furthermore. So during 2 years, I went back to Vietnam and served full time for 2 years and established 4 more churches of Christ. Now, one of the things that I would like to mention is, sorry, here in Frank, when I first came there, I used Brother Ed Wharton, his material, the class that historical Christian evidences. I used that material and teach. Out of that class, we have about 30 to 35 people were baptized into Christ. Yes, and the numbers just keep going up about 50. That my I baptized them, but after that, the local people continue to baptize people more. So after that, we after after the point to of 2015 to 2017. So this is the Church of Christ today in Vietnam. Of course, several churches were established, but also do not survive. But here is the picture of the all the churches of Christ in Vietnam in the south, and in the south I mean up to this point, up to the middle of Vietnam. Yeah. Um, we also have Christian all over Vietnam, from the south to the north, but we have true Christian, but they don't have the church. For example, in Hanoi, we have Christian, and this place also have Christian, but they don't have the church. Yeah. So now, what do we learn about history in this sense? Is um, as you can see right now that the fall of Saigon is not the fall of the church. Yeah, and then that even the severe persecution, it does not hold back the growth of the church. So definitely, this is the work of the Lord. It's not us. Yes, He used us as an instrument and whatsoever, but this is His work. And as you can see very clear that my family was the family that remained. And during the past, that seemed to us as a bad news because the 2 helicopters did not came. At that time, as a bad news, but when we look back, it's the good news because if every Christian that was rescued to any country, then who left for the work in Vietnam to evangelize? So definitely, the fall of Saigon is not the fall of the church. It's just the beginning in a different way that how the church to grow. And then second point is from the church that received the fully supported from the overseas. Now they move to the state that they have to stand on their feet. So that reflect our mission in Vietnam right now. That wherever we go and we establish churches, in the first beginning of the church, they have to be self-sustained, self-support. And so actually, you may ask that, okay, what do we learn about the history of the church in Vietnam? And this is a few things that I would like to share. Now, the Bible said that remember your leaders, those who spoke to you the word of God, consider the outcome of their way of life and imitate their faith. So you can see that the people in the past, they serve as a good example and bad example. Now, if we have to imitate their faith, then you have to choose good or bad to imitate. And then God has been working through our ministry plus the people that uh, before us. At least we have over 700 people have been baptized into Christ. So you can see that those who were before us, their work have not labored in vain. Even in the time that appear or seem to be in vain, because whatever resources, whatever that they try to work is, it seemed to be nothing because of the fall of Saigon, all kinds of things. But you can see, look back, you can see right now, it's not in vain. So the point is, you have to choose the example that you have to live with, because of the Bible says so. Now, you may ask that, what is it has to do with me right now? So the point is, will you or can you? Because the verse in Isaiah chapter 6, verse 8 said that, whom shall I send and who will go for us? So I like Rob Brandy this one. Put your name there. Yes, that I learned from him. Put your name there. So, but don't say that, here I am, send him. Don't say that. Yeah, people will say that, here I am, but send somebody, not me. So, here I am, send me, and put your name there. And from now, 50 years from now, people will talk about you, whether that you have a good example of faith or bad example of faith. And that is true. Right now, I stand before you and I'm talking about those who have gone before me in the work, and I present to you the good and the bad example of faith. So 50 years from now, people will talk about you. Now, what picture that you would like for them to talk about you? As a good or bad example? You cannot be in between. Yeah, you have to be one of them. And then the question is right now that, will you or can you be a good example of faith to the people around you? That you will leave your legacy, your impact to the people around you and for the future, wherever that you are. Third, the harvest is plentiful. That is our Jesus' word. And it has been plentiful since the day that he came to earth to this point. So the point is, the harvest is ready for us to harvest, but the labors are few. Now, will you or can you be the field in the field, the field in the harvest? Can you be in the small number that just try to live and be a good example to the people around and to harvest that the Lord venture? Because he is still at work in any country, in anywhere that we are Christian right now. So that is the choice for you to make today. And that is the thing that we learn from the history. And you can write the history right now. It's not a matter of your willing or not. So I leave with you the question, will you or can you? Thank you so much.